Okay, so we're back to talking about a topic that I bet a lot of you haven't heard enough about, which is the fucking Trump-Russia scandals. Now, let me make something clear. Even being just a person who has, maybe 2 days a week to really work on these things, sometimes a little more during the week, during the evenings. I still have more varied coverage of news events than outlets like CNN. I mean, I did one yesterday on the Catalonian separatism from Spain. I did another one on the Real News Network. I've done ones on the Clinton crime family in the past few weeks. I've done stories on all sorts of topics that have very little to do with Donald Trump. I did one on the ADL that was, more about CNN than it was about Trump and Russia. But, it's time to actually go back and look at what updates there are. And one of the funny stories that's coming out is this: Donald Trump Jr. met with a Russian lawyer to get dirt on Hillary, according to a report by who, I'm not sure. Sorry about the pop-up. But I don't know why it's doing this. So you get this photo of Trump Jr. Looks a little like his dad. It says, President Trump's eldest son was lured to a meeting with a Kremlin-connected Russian lawyer with the promise of damaging information about Democratic opponent Hillary Clinton, according to a new report. Donald Trump Jr. attended the June 9, 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Natalia Veselnitskaya over the prospect of compromising information that Russian individuals were funding the Democratic nominee, according to the New York Times. The Times first reported Saturday the existence of the meeting between the lawyer and Trump Jr., Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. But new reporting suggests the motivation. Trump Jr. said the inner circle met with Veselnitskaya at the meeting at the request of an acquaintance. After pleasantries were exchanged, Trump Jr. said in a statement to the Times, the woman stated that she had information that individuals connected to Russia were funding the Democratic National Committee and supporting Ms. Clinton. Her statements were vague, ambiguous, and made no sense. No details or supporting information was provided or even offered. It quickly became clear that she had no meaningful information. A spokesman for President Trump, Mark Corallo, said the president was not aware of and did not attend the meeting. Trump Jr. said the prospect of dirt on Clinton was the pretext for the meeting. But after it began, it was clear the real agenda was policy changes that Vladimir Putin desired regarding the adoption of Russian children and the Magnitsky Act that targets suspected human rights abusers. White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus Sunday downplayed the meeting as a big nothing burger during an appearance on Fox News Sunday. So let me just talk about what the implications of this are. Now, I'm not going to say that it was smart or not smart because I don't know who this person is. And it could be that, maybe it was a bad idea to meet this person. Maybe it was unethical in some way. However, you have to wonder who summoned the meeting. First of all, at the time, President Obama was claiming that it was preposterous that Russia had hacked the election. The other thing, and this, because remember, this was June 2016. Another issue that you should bear in mind is that this was a lawyer, and that it's very interesting how the attorney-client confidentiality will work out in this case. If there was a person, hypothetically, that was trying to blackmail Hillary Clinton and sell the information to Donald Trump, even if it was the Kremlin, this lawyer may not be allowed to divulge who that person is due to attorney-client privilege. Now, I'm not sure about that. If you have any more clarification about that, if you're like an ethics attorney or something, I mean, you can comment below. Maybe you can give me a little more of a 411. But so far it looks like it's going to be very difficult to substantiate any of these charges. We're talking about a person who had a formal meeting apparently at Trump Tower with one of the president's sons, before he was president, obviously. And we don't see any evidence of actual information passed along. Trump Jr. claims that there was no valuable information passed along. And think about it this way, okay? Even if it were true that Trump Jr. did meet this woman and was requesting this information, how did all of that compromising information appear to the media and the world at large? It had nothing to do with Trump Jr. It had to do with WikiLeaks. Now, if you're going to try to say now that Trump Jr. received the files and then leaked it to Julian Assange, then I think you really are kind of trying to join two ends of rope that are too frayed to begin with. You have a problem here where you're trying to attribute a phenomenon that happened in 2016 where all of these emails were hacked, or let's say they were leaked, possibly by somebody within the DNC. I think we all know who that may be. I'm not trying to get one of these fake copyrights filed against me, so I'm not going to mention his name, but his it rhymes with meth stitch. Anyway, so we have these new allegations against Trump Jr. and people are going to freak out. The people who keep freaking out and saying, "Oh, this is finally the smoking gun against Donald Trump." Well, none of these things are actual credible crimes, and until the Democrats get a majority in the House, which they are, if you've watched some of my other videos, like the DNC TV Funhouse, they are doing their darndest not to get a majority in the House. And therefore, there will be no impeachment, at least until the next term of Donald Trump, if he loses control of the House. Then I think, I'm trying not to be cocky here, okay? But they are doing their best not to win seats in the House, because many of these representatives that are going to be running in 2020, or 2018, sorry, they're going to have nothing to show for any of their activity in Congress. They did virtually nothing under Obama from 2008 till 2010. Since the Republicans have taken control of the House, they've been virtually on lockdown, these Democrats. All they can do is rage out all the time. Under Obama, they were raging about obstruction. Under Trump, they're being obstructionist. So, it has nothing to do with the Republicans being effective. This is all Donald Trump neutralizing them and making them seem impotent. I think the Republican Party is actually the real disgrace here, because they're not actually passing actual pieces of legislation that are relevant. So, that's it for the Donald Trump aspect of or the Donald Trump Jr. aspect of the stories. Okay, now we are going to move on to the topic of the Russian ceasefire at the G20. Now, there's a lot of things at the G20 I didn't really cover. There were the riots. There was all this crap with, Angela Merkel and Macron and Trudeau just giving Trump basically the stink eye. I think, they've been meeting each other so often lately. It's pretty much a cafeteria story. And, until these countries can actually put together a real economic front against Trump, all of their stink eye will be meaningless. They're all dependent on the Trump administration economically, on the United States, that is. So they can't do shit about it. And if Trump goes ahead and does this Brexit trade deal with the UK, then the power of the EU will probably be completely shattered and undermined, plus all the other stuff that I've been talking about, like the Catalan independence, and it's bound to happen that Italy will be a major battlefield between the EU supporters and the Eurosceptics. So what about this other major story? between Trump and Russia, this ceasefire agreement. So this is from June 9th. It says, U.S. President Donald Trump called for expanded cooperation with Russia on Sunday as a ceasefire brokered by the two powers in Jordan for southern Syria came into effect. The ceasefire covered 3 war-torn provinces in southern Syria, is the first tangible outcome following months of strategy and diplomacy between the new Trump administration and Russian President Vladimir Putin's Moscow. This article is kind of written like shit. Trump tweeted that the ceasefire, which came into effect at noon Sunday, will save lives. Now it is time to move forward in working constructively with Russia, he posted on Twitter shortly after the agreement came into effect. A resident and local opposition activist in Daraa, near the opposition border, reported an uneasy calm hours into the truce. There's still a lot of anxiety. We've entered into the ceasefire, but there are no mechanisms to enforce it. That's what concerns people. There's more stuff about this. The truce also covers the Quneitra and Sweda provinces, where the government and the rebels are also fighting Islamic State militants were not included in the agreement. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which monitors the conflict through a network of on-the-ground activists, reported the calm across the 3 provinces as dusk fell Sunday. The ceasefire agreement followed weeks of secretive talks between the U.S., Russia, and Jordan and Amman to address the buildup of Iranian-backed forces in support of the Israeli government near the Jordanian and Israeli borders. Israel has repeatedly said it would not allow Iran, which is a close ally of the Syrian government, to set up a permanent presence in Syria. It has carried out a number of airstrikes in Syria against suspected shipments of game-changing weapons bound for Hezbollah in Lebanon. It has also struck military installations on several occasions this year after shells landed inside the Israeli-controlled side of the Golan Heights. So then it goes into some of the, here we go, the Syrian government maintains it is fighting a war against terrorist groups. The al-Qaeda-linked Levant Liberation Committee is one of the most effective factions fighting alongside rebels in Daraa. So this is kind of a fuzzy area. And there was also already a statement by Lindsey Graham today that was condemning it, that saying, that you can't let Assad stay there in Iran and whatever. Look, I don't support Iran being in Syria either. So I would say that this is kind of a start. It's good. I think that if Putin and Trump are serious about this agreement, it could do a lot of good. I stated a couple of months ago that my position is a little more, I don't know if you could put it on either side of the conflict. I've said that you have to Syrianize the war. What does that mean? You have to broker a massive convention and agreement between all of the participants in the war. That would include the USA, Russia, Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, who else? Qatar, Lebanon, and Jordan, and Israel, if all the other countries in the room, I mean, if they don't try to say, no, fuck them, we're not going to have an agreement with them. But as many countries as possible have to come in, and they have to hammer out an agreement that all foreign forces have to be withdrawn from Syria, that without exception. Because the longer that there are troops there that are from a foreign power, it doesn't matter what it is. So I'm not trying to, and I think that there are certainly countries that have a larger share of the blame than others. I do believe that Iran has a larger share of the blame than, let's say, Jordan. But I'm just saying this, it's a simple, that's my viewpoint, but my actual solution should be acceptable for any of these countries that are in favor of ending the turmoil in Syria, the massive carnage there. And it's this: if you remove all the foreign forces that don't have a stake in keeping the country from sustaining more damage and bloodshed, then it will be a little harder for the war to continue going. You probably will see some fighting going on for the foreseeable future between the Syrian government and whatever opposition there is there. It could end up with a government victory. It could end up with a peace treaty if they actually go forward and they expand this withdrawal agreement and include and build on that and produce an actual agreement between the government and the opposition, so they could hypothetically remove Assad, which I don't know what hope there is for that at this point, but it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, we've reached a point where we don't know how to remove this head of state from Syria. There's certainly nothing that I support in the Assad regime, but I don't think that without a major invasion by Turkey or something, that the war can actually be swung to one side or the other. There's already massive forces of Iran in Syria. They've sustained heavy casualties, so have the Hezbollah people, but they're willing to do it. So, my viewpoint is this: the more, like, if you can get them to withdraw their troops, you can get all the other countries to withdraw their troops, I think that we can finally see, at least a movement towards closure. And I don't know if we can ever get there, but what's been going on so far, adding more countries to the mix, has not been working. So that's it about the Syria ceasefire, which I think is, I don't think it's a bad idea. Some of the other things, like Trump's proposal of a cyber task force with Putin, it does sound kind of ridiculous, and I think he should have not even talked about it to the media. If he was going to do it, which I think is also kind of a horrible idea, then I think it would have been a better idea not even to talk about it, just to do it. And then there's all this other stuff about Trump, the Polish first lady and whatever, and his speech in Poland that was like massively popular there apparently. The media, they won't give him credit for the things that he's good at. Look, I'll be honest with you. There's things that he's been doing that I think aren't that great, like his bumbling leadership on healthcare, and I think he is going overseas way too much, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that because I think, for example, a lot of people would say, well, Obama used to go overseas every fucking week. I don't care. Because, in my opinion, the main job of his is to manage affairs over here. As far as I'm concerned, he can send somebody else to do any of these conferences. They don't add to anything, in my opinion. Maybe even if he is doing a good job, I think that his main focus should be on the domestic policy. I think most of what I do is focused on domestic policy because some of these things, honestly, on the international arena, who gives a fuck? Honestly, who's the real decider there? It's the economy. It's the way that it's world markets. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what a government can or can't do. That's the way it is often. I guess sometimes economic policy can adversely affect the world economy, but that's more to do with domestic policy. So, I think I covered a few topics here related to Trump, Russia, and all that. And ultimately, I think that his policy of pursuing, an amicable relationship with Russia. I'm not saying they should be our best friends, but having a normalized relationship with them, working with them, and dismantling some of the hatred between the two countries, it could work out. I'm not saying it will. I think that the whole NATO expansion, which I've been reading a little about over the past few days, that was a massive mistake done in the 90s. It was under President Clinton. Among the other at the time, it looked like a brilliant idea because nobody thought that Russia would come back from the brink. Yeltsin was weak, but it's come back to bite us and them in the ass. And besides that, it's like a lot of these other globalist policies that have been taken. NAFTA is now considered to be a complete failure. Some people would say it's a success, but most of those people are in the corporate world. If the corporate world wants to consider it a success, they have to come up with a solution for average Americans. And I don't think it's been found yet. So that's NAFTA, and then there was the TPP, and there were other agreements. That in my opinion, Trump has to win the battle there. If he wins the battle there, then a lot of these doubters will really disappear. They won't have what to complain about in that respect. And he's already winning in so many categories that people don't even pay attention to, that I'm going to have to try to find other topics where we can really discuss what his flaws are, because the Trump-Russia thing is so weird. I think this whole thing about Trump Jr., which I'm going to switch back to before ending, you have to wait the next couple of days to see how serious it is. There's been so many retractions lately and so many instances of actual fake news. And I'm not going to say ahead of time, before I know more, that this is fake news or it didn't happen. I can believe the Times if they say that Trump Jr. gave a statement that there was a meeting. But, these things, they're just part of the daily life now. Nobody cares. They're getting fatigued from it. And if there's nothing that's of real value from this new information, then people are just going to continue to get jaded. So anyway, this is Ramon, bold like a leopard. Trump, Russia, huge scandal. I don't think so. I mean, I think that we have to, we're kind of moving into the boy who cried wolf phase of this whole saga. So we'll see. I mean, unless they really discover something crazy that Trump Jr. did in this meeting, I really have no clue what they're going to, what tail they're going to pin on this donkey. So have a great night, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.